We have a sector showcase, so we've got a couple of services who are going to come up and showcase their work. So firstly, we've got Zoe Blome, the Senior Manager of Community Services for ICLA, and then we'll hear from Dylan, the Program Manager from Weave Youth and Community Services. So if you guys want to come up.
Well, firstly, thanks to NADA and MHCC for inviting us here today to talk about PARC, our Bondi Prevention and Recovery Centre. I'm Zoe, I'm the Senior Manager of Community Services for ICLA. ICLA broadly looks at psychosocial disability in the eastern suburbs, inner west, southeast Sydney kind of area. But today I'm showcasing PARC. So the context, I guess the problem that PARC is concerned with is that, as we all know, that consumers have a range of different experiences when accessing mental health supports through hospitals, whether through emergency departments or through admissions. And although they play a significant role, we know that it's often not a great fit and that there's a lack of alternatives for people. So we know that people with mental health and AOD issues are going to have longer wait times compared to others in emergency departments. They're going to have longer stays in emergency departments compared with others. And they're going to have, as a consequence of some of the experiences they have through the system, they're going to have low rapport with mental health professionals and the system more broadly, and at times even experiencing trauma and those sorts of poor experiences through the system. So Bondi PARC presents an alternative. So it's based on a similar Victoria Health model that's been implemented across Victoria in lots of different iterations since 2003. It provides a safe space and a hospital alternative for people to build connection, hope and capacity to aid their mental health recovery journey. It's an 8-bed home-like and community-based residential setting, and it's importantly away from hospital. 28-day voluntary step-up, step-down program with a minimum 12-week gap between stays. It's delivered in partnership between us, ICLA, an NGO, and the local health district mental health service. So all of the referrals come through the community mental health team. So as I referred to before, PARC looks really different in different areas in Victoria. There are heaps of different parks. There are slightly different, more cleared variations on the model, but then there's also just local variations based on, I guess, what physical resources and things were available at the time when it was developed. So they do tend to exist on a continuum between the more clinical, hospital adjacent, mostly, and those services tend to get mostly step down. So step down being referrals from after a hospital's admission, so that to slowly transition somebody out of back into the community, versus more peer-led, home-like, community-based, which is what our model provides. And as a result, we see most of our referrals coming from the community up. So people are sort of self-referring through their case managers to when they're feeling like they're becoming unwell in the community, as an alternative to feeling like they have to wait to get unwell enough to go to hospital, which we know causes a lot of distress. So the support provided at PARC is mainly, you've got intentional peer support 24/7. So there's always 1 or 2 peer support workers on site. Then we also, and they're all trained in intentional peer support. All of the support provided is trauma informed, including the mental health nursing support, which is available 9 to 5, 7 days. And the leadership is also critically provided in collaboration as well. So we've got our peer team leader who collaborates very, very closely with the clinical nurse consultant from CESLID that So I employ the team leader and they employ the CNC, and they work together to create this special program. So the park guest experience, we particularly obviously very focused on being person-centred, and as such refer to the people that participate as guests rather than patients, and we refer to stays as instead of admissions. Guests can engage in individual weekly shared care meetings to identify and work towards goals and strategies. They are expected to be independent in medication management, transport, cooking, cleaning during their stay, with group meals planned and prepared collaboratively. And even though there are nurses on site to assist with and provide some advice around medication, there's no medication compliance monitoring, that sort of thing. Guests can choose to engage in a range of on-site group activities run by the peer support workers and other external providers, but also we try to build people's capacity to access services that are going to be available to them in the local community beyond their stay at park. So there's a lot of emphasis on linking people with groups that they're going to find purposeful beyond their 28 days. Now, this is a video, and whether it's going to work is no. Any chance? That's all right. This was going to give you the visual idea of what actually park looks like and hear from some of our participants, but essentially it is just it feels like a home. It doesn't feel like a hospital. People are free to come and go as they please, to engage with as much or as little as they want. It's really choose your own adventure and pick up, hopefully, as much as you can. And we're trying to meet people where they're at. So just want to preface that we've had 118 guests come through, around 180 stays over the 4 years that the program, almost 4 years that the program's been running. So all of these numbers the data is very low numbers, and it's very preliminary, but overall we do see some trends. So mostly females, and a very strong trend towards step up, which is very different to the Victorian model, which I think is predominantly step down from hospital. A pretty even range around ages, and the majority of individuals either coming to us with a diagnosis of schizoaffective or disorder or schizophrenia, though quite a lot of diversity there as well. The average length of stays is 24 days, which really most people choose to stay for the whole time, which I think also speaks to them feeling like this is a service for them. The rate of people having a mental health admission within 28 days of a stay is less than 7%. We have got about 15% of our participants do have some level of alcohol and drug issues as well. So I'm just going to outline some outcome data now. We have two sources of information. We collect RASDS as a pre and post measure. We've been doing that for a couple of years now. We also have, through our partners at Health, we have access to patient activity data for our guests. So the local health district completed a review a couple of years ago now, comparing the 6 months pre a person's stay at post to the 6 months post their stay in terms of their activity in mental health admissions and presentations to emergency department for mental health concerns. So as you may or may not know, the recovery assessment scale is split along 5 domains, and we say that the biggest, of course, there's improvements across the board, pre and post, but we are seeing the biggest changes in this mastering my illness domain, which is sort of how well do I feel, how confident am I in managing the symptoms in the community, and how much are my symptoms impacting and getting in the way of things. Overall, it's about a 10% improvement with a slightly higher result for people that come to us more than once. So there's a small cohort that have come 2+ times, and we do seem to see increased improvement as with repeated stays. They've got to wait 3 months in between each stay though. So in terms of the EMR data review, we've got some really strong outcomes here as well. So an overall 33% reduction in mental health emergency department presentations in the 6 months post-PARC compared with the 6 months prior. 38% of all guests reduced the number of attendances post-PARC to some extent. And 80% of our guests had less than or 1 attendance. 100% of the 6 most frequent presenters to emergency departments reduced their attendances post-PARC. So we know that it's also having an impact for the people that are really engaging with the system the most. So in terms of mental health admissions, also very strong. We're seeing a 44% reduction in mental health admissions, and 29% of people who had an admission prior had no admission in the 6 months post. So obviously this is all very preliminary, and we've been lucky enough to get a CMHD-ARN Innovation Grant last year to do the first proper evaluation of the PARC service in New South Wales, which we're really excited about. And there will be a focus on evaluating if there's some difference in outcomes for our guests who have those co-occurring mental health and alcohol and other drug concerns. That's it. Any questions?
There's just someone online wanting to know what the best referral pathway is for the step down for the PARC.
So for the step down or step up, it's the same referral pathway. You have to go through the mental health service. So they need to be linked with a case manager or with somebody through the community mental health team at South East Sydney Local Health District. But speak to the case manager if they're linked. We're also working with CESLA to see if we can potentially expand the eligibility criteria to include people that are linked with the virtual case management service, the VSAS service. But that's still watch this space at this time.
Are there any? One question over there.
Hi, I think I heard you right. Did you say that there had to be a 3-month distance from them being exited to being eligible to come back in?
That's correct.
If a client or a participant actually needed the support within that 3 months, is there an alternative support system you can provide them or refer them onto?
I mean, it's because it's shared care between us and the health system, they will essentially still stay with their case manager for ongoing support, and it'll be their responsibility to be linking them with alternative supports in the interim.
Yeah, out in the community.
Yes, in the community.
Okay.
Or in hospital if that's where they're at.
Yeah.
Were there any more questions for Zoe?
Hi Zoe, thanks for the presentation. I'm sure I've asked you this before, but it
no,
just comes to
please.
mind. How many of the people using your service might have an NDIS package that they can be utilising while they're with you, or is that uncommon?
We don't actually track that, which I think is probably it's definitely not nobody. I reckon it's probably close to 50% if I had to judge it. There's definitely people who have their NDIS supports continuing while they're during their stay, support workers coming in and supporting them from park.
Any other questions? One more online, I think.
I think there's just a comment about whether this is something that can be trialled regionally and rurally.
Yes, please. Yes, ICLA is doing a lot to try, and so is MHCC, to try to really raise the profile and the need for more parks across New South Wales. I feel like, yeah, if any of us have had the experience of supporting people in and out of the hospital system, it's very clear that an alternative is required and would really, really help. So we need as many as possible, in my opinion.
I was just going to comment there that MHCC has advocated very strongly for there to be a step up, step down in at least one in every LHD.
Yes,
so in
and
all our
sometimes more.
inquiries,
I love that.
we keep on repeating ourselves like an old gramophone record. But
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Amy Wyndham from the Mental Health Branch at New South Wales Health. Just to reassure people, there are actually quite a lot of services out there to support people to live the way they want to back into the community. Our Housing and Supported Accommodation Initiative and Community Living Supports programs are available across the state, delivered by our fabulous CMO partners, as is our HASI Plus service that provides accommodation for between 12 to 36 months on average. Got skewed a little bit over COVID, but there are actually quite a lot of community services available out there should you need them. So please sort of reach out to your local health district mental health partners if you need to refer anyone on. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Not online? No? Okay. Thank you, Zoe. And that was, valuable presentation. Thank you. Okay, Dylan, come on down.
Hi everyone, my name's Dylan. I'm one of the programs leads at Weave Youth and Community Services. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that I stand today on unceded Gadigal country, and also that Weave has sites that stand on the unceded land of both Gadigal and Bidjigal people. So before I continue, I'd just like to acknowledge that land sovereignty was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Didn't test the button before I started. Boom, sweet. Just a little bit of context about who Weave is before I launch into our dual diagnosis program. Weave is a place-based organisation. We've been in the communities that we work in for a long time. We started in Waterloo in 1976, check my notes. So we've been doing this sort of community-led work in those communities for a long time. And pretty much all of our programs have been led sort of by community feedback, by community knowledge, by them telling us or telling governments around what it is that they need in terms of service delivery in the area. We stick to that ethos, so all the programs that are developed are still being driven in the same ways. That was the laser. I didn't know we had this. Did anybody else know that you had this? That's too much power. I need to put it down. Just quickly, the organisational purpose is to empower people to change their lives. Our vision is for a strong, connected community with opportunities, equity and justice for all. And our values: respect, justice, community-led connection, courage, diversity, creativity and perseverance, and a sense of humour. As I said, we're across Gadigal and Bidjigal land at Weave, so we have our HQ in Waterloo, which some people may have been to. It looks like a big giant shed, kind of, covered in vines. Our Woolloomooloo hub as well, which has our TEI programs. Our Weave Women and Children Centre, Staying Home, Leaving Violence, and TEI programs there, and our Weave Cool Kids. Waterloo is also the home of our Aboriginal Cultural Engagement program, our Aboriginal Healing program, Driving Change, Tutoring program, Speak Out Dual Diagnosis program, and Creating Futures Justice program. I think I got that right. I acknowledge I'm speaking it towards the end of the day, so I feel like by this point we're going to be saying some things everyone's going to be going, yep, not pretty sure we know about that. But I'll burn through and we can all nod politely. Much of the clinical evidence available we know points to integrated approaches providing the best outcomes for people with co-occurring needs. Integrated approaches have also been successful in engaging and retaining clients with co-occurring mental health experiences and alcohol and drug use. And I also included this quote here from the Victorian Dual Diagnosis Initiative, which is these people with co-occurring mental health and drug and alcohol challenges. These are the people who tend to have poorer outcomes and higher costs of care. However, instead of systems being designed to clearly welcome and prioritise them, individuals and families with complexity have historically been experienced as misfits at every level, which I find very stressful. As recently for us as our 2020 external evaluation of the Speak Out Dual Diagnosis Program, young people through that external evaluation process were still reporting consistently feeling like before they entered Speak Out, stuck between different support systems, siloed. We include a quote here that is, not a lot of places will treat you. If you know you're a drug user with mental health problems, they're like, lost cause, that one, you know. Whenever I include this quote, it makes me very sad, but also I'm picking up, just saying it now, on something that I think it was Ellen in the panel before, everybody's been so excellent, was saying around disclosures, pre-admission disclosures around suicide, residential rehab. And often when I read this, I'm just remembering Ellen's comments and thinking, it's always better to know, I think, as a service. It's always better to know that somebody is trusting you with information. They're being so candid so early on. You're in such a strong position to actually be able to engage somebody and work collaboratively. So, to Speak Out, which is our sort of our flagship, biggest program at Weave, the Speak Out Dual Diagnosis Program. Quite wild to think, but we're entering our 25th year of operation. At the time I put in here one of the very first. I'm pretty sure it was the first, but I didn't want to go out on a limb on a big presentation. One of the very first dual diagnosis programs working with young people in inner Sydney. Typically, in terms of the client base, everybody has co-occurring needs, and around 65 to 70% of the young people supported by Speak Out are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people. We also have a self-referral rate of around 65%. This sort of fluctuates between sort of 60 and 70. A self-referral rate also includes referred by a family member or friend. We include that in there as well. And it's just a nice thing, I think, to reflect on, that it speaks to a bit of trust and standing in the community for us. Other common referral pathways include health, other NGOs, some of which are in the room. I recognise a lot of faces, DCJ and more. Speak Out also supports throughout every year a number of major youth-led projects. So some of these that people might have heard of are Mad Pride, What is Your Utopia, the What You Don't Hear podcast, a sort of fortnightly young women's group, art therapy groups, Smart Recovery, and What You Don't See. And I will talk a little bit more about those projects and their role a little bit later. So the model for Speak Out is a holistic support model. So it's wraparound casework and counselling for young people aged 12 to 28 without the pressure of short-term intervention. So being holistic for us really means working with the whole person and their view on their presenting issues. So that includes often, homelessness, housing, justice system involvement, family preservation work, and much more. We're very much committed to disentangling the barriers between alcohol and drug service delivery and mental health support for young people. And we see ourselves still filling a gap in service delivery that can be difficult for young people to find elsewhere, which is really total wraparound and holistic support. It's important for us that when a young person joins Speak Out, that they can lead what they want to focus on in terms of the goals that they set for themselves, but also what they see as the most important presenting issue, whether it be our assessment of what is more prevalent, mental health, drug and alcohol, whatever it is, we really don't play a role in that at all. It's about the person leading us in what it is that they'd like to focus on. And our service delivery centres around responding to community need. I mentioned before that casework in Speak Out is holistic and therapeutic. It's responsive to the needs of a young person. It's led by the goals that they identify for themselves. And being a long-term support model, we are committed to sustainable, positive change for young people. And our work is always person-led, person-centred and strengths-based. And whenever I say that we're a long-term model, it seems like we go forever and ever and ever. We do sometimes, full disclosure. But we're always looking for safe exits as well. You know, it's that really beautiful conversation where you come to a point where you've met the goals that you'd set with the person you're working with, and you can have that opportunity to say, how are you feeling? What's your reflection on the support period? What's your reflection on the work? And often you have that really beautiful safe exit. Doesn't always go forever. Sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's 5 years. But we are pretty steadfast in being committed to knowing that the longer term work in terms of bolstering the sustainability of any results is absolutely critical. And we've been doing this work in that model for nearly 25 years. Our counselling staff are trained across a number of modalities and thus have a skill sets across the team to support a wide range of young people. And I guess just an acknowledgement here that we still work in quite serious complex needs sometimes as well. So we will take referrals from pointy end, alcohol and drug or mental health sector. Yeah. I said I'd talk a little bit about project work. Something that we try to do in Speak Out as well is that we try to widen, I guess, the service delivery so that it isn't just totally individualised casework or individualised counselling, but being a youth service, I think it's quite important to also sprinkle in opportunities to step out of that work, whether that be in group spaces or creative spaces. And for us, we've just heard from young people consistently that these opportunities to step out of that work have just been fun more than anything else, but also helpful and help to counter isolation when you're in treatment or in receiving services. One big one that we do every year, which I'm not sure if anybody has been, is Mad Pride. So Mad Pride every year is always fully youth designed and youth led. So we have a youth steering committee and the staff member that supports them really slots in behind. The young people on the steering committee are always paid for their time and their knowledge in leading the event. And it's held during Mental Health Month in October each year. We had our 16th one this year. And we had about 300 or so people come. We had 7 young people on the steering committee, all paid, 8 young performers, as well as an art exhibition that sold out, which was excellent, and a bunch of games, food, community vibes. It's very nice. Some photos. Oh, this is where I could use this. We also run every fortnight a young women's group. Again, this is one of our projects that came out of community, clients, young people telling us that this was a gap. We at the organisation were doing quite a few things with groups of young men. So we had like OzTag happening, we had these music groups which just happened to naturally become quite a male space, and the feedback was let's find something for our young people that are female identifying or non-binary or female identifying. And the group really was designed with that in mind to respond, and has always been led by the participants and the people that are coming fortnightly. We meet every Tuesday. I say we, I don't go to the group. They meet every second Tuesday, typically at we, but also we do a lot of external facilitated groups and activities. And it really has become this really beautiful safe space to celebrate and support each other as a group of young people, and also the staff, I believe, have always fed back that they get sort of infinite wisdom from that space, and it's been so beneficial also for them. And it's really created a sense of belonging and community, which is just respite from the stress of coming in and doing housing applications and counselling and justice system issues and all those sorts of things that can start to become the reason that you attend a place like Weave. I won't labour the project section, it's longer than I thought it was when I wrote the slides. But we also have a youth-led podcast, What You Don't Hear, and just this is the What You Don't See was a sort of one-off project that we've done as well, which I encourage you to check out, as well as What Is Your Utopia and a number of other periodic short-term little one-offs that we've done over the years. In terms of the model and what we've found, we've found through our recent external evaluation, and also through sort of client feedback, client measurement surveys and all these sorts of data points, that we effectively support young people experiencing complex needs, and including a high proportion of people experiencing homelessness or in contact with the criminal justice system and living with complex mental health experiences. I put a little note in here as well that for us, I guess, just when we avoid siloing those alcohol and drug and mental health spaces in this model, there really is this rich middle ground that opens up. And I think through the evaluations, one of the really kind of key findings was that yes, we're set up to do this work in these ways, but there's this huge proportion of people with other complex needs, and that it's nice to know that there's an impact in those areas. We also have learnt that the variety in support, so the individualised casework, counselling, group work, events, creative expression work, has also allowed young people to work on a diverse range of outcomes concurrently. Also from the evaluation, we learned that Speak Out supports a sizeable and underserved population in Sydney, which is young people with co-occurring needs. That is absolutely not to say that there is not countless fantastic people in this room and services in this room, but it still is more to do who are doing this work. And also that we have a strong track record of engaging and retaining young people in the program, which if there's any other youth service people, I know Belinda, obviously one, it's not always that easy to do. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the principles of support in the co-occurring space for us at Weave. I'll preface by saying this is our approach to this work, and I thought I'd share some of these today. That we try not to replicate the separation of services that people with co-occurring needs have likely experienced previously. So we never want a first experience or second experience, really at any point an experience, to feel like we are again compartmentalizing somebody, splitting them into different parts and separating them out. We always remain non-judgmental and non-blaming, also safe in the knowledge that journeys are not linear, and that we're always avoiding positioning ourselves as experts in somebody else's journey, in somebody else's life, knowing full well that no one is more of an expert in somebody than themselves. We're encouraging always our staff to allow time for trust to build and also respect the vulnerability of a person that is reaching out for help and for support. I say this a lot to staff, but it's often not somebody's best day when they call up to receive services. It's often not somebody's best day when they walk through the door to receive services, and I think that deserves really serious respect and it deserves space. So we're always encouraging our staff to respect that vulnerability and allow time. You know, if it was me walking through that door, I always go to that place. I don't know how I would be able to be so candid, so trusting and so strong as what I'm able to experience young people attending our service every single day. So it really does deserve time and respect. We also encourage staff to take the moments that are presented by a client, whether they be big or small, to try to impact and provide support. And I guess that's to say that, you know, your mental health knowledge might not be super clinical or super advanced in your assessment of yourself, but maybe your housing knowledge or your Centrelink knowledge or your alcohol and drug knowledge is really good, and it could have a transformative impact, which I think leads in also to this point here around, seems like a simple thing when it's written down, but look more for what you can do to support rather than the reasons that you can't. And I think in this sort of siloed space sometimes, which you know, is improving, I think we've heard a lot of reflections today that is improving, but always starting from a place of what is it that I can do to provide support to this person, not the reasons that you can't. You know, somebody might have something going on that you don't feel you have the well-rounded knowledge, or you don't have the complete accurate thing to say in every single moment, but that doesn't, we can't totalitize that as removing ourselves as an option to do anything or provide any kind of support in that moment. And a simple one, set goals with clients and revisit them periodically. A few more, then I'm done. Respect an individual as the expert on themselves, on their life and on their goals. Try to always be person-led and person-centered, and for us that's about hearing and responding from the person that you're identifying what they themselves think are the significant issues and ways to impact them. Again, I think this is fairly simple, but in practice we all, I say we all, I'll just say myself, I have always sometimes struggled with this. You feel like you have a strong sense of what it is that somebody could do, or you feel like you have, you know, I actually really know this referral pathway or this thing. It can be an urge, but trying to stay completely committed to knowing that this person will tell you what it is that they want to do. Working holistically and being led by the person also, I believe, can really help to disentangle how to do the work and how to respond to complexity. So I know part of the discussion around co-occurring needs is always that there's, I don't know, colloquially put, a lot going on. But for us, working holistically and just allowing the person to lead us in the work, I think goes a long way to remove that complexity when you're being told by somebody, this is actually what it is that I'm wanting to do and this is how I'm feeling and this is what I'd like to do about it. that narrows it way down. We can obviously extrapolate for ourselves, but when somebody is telling you and guiding you really candidly, transparently and trusting, it really does remove, I think, a lot of the complexity in the work. And not just focusing on somebody's problems, but looking at the whole person. This ties also to the project work I was talking about before, but very much trying to find and focus on somebody's strengths, their responses, their capability, their creativity, and finding ways and different spaces and opportunities for them to express that and to build on those, I think is really important. Again, that's our experience, that's our work. It's one way to do it, I guess. Again, thanks, I'm finished. I should put this up. There you go. It's such a privilege to be able to do these talks, especially when you're in a room of such excellent colleagues as well. It makes it even more difficult, actually, I'll say, but also even more of a privilege. So thank you so much. Oh, questions?
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Are there any questions from online? Katie?
There's just a question about like referral times and like prioritizing, like if there's certain populations or needs that are prioritized in your referrals.
Not necessarily. I wouldn't give like a blanket answer to that, because sometimes there is something that is so critically urgent that I would eat my words on what I'm about to say. So take this with a pinch of salt, small caveat, small preface. We take the view that everybody that is coming for support has needs, and we have to run a wait list in a way that is, I guess, shows the requisite respect and equity to that. So we will respond to really urgent needs, particularly if it's within the organisation. There's another team or a family that we've worked with for a long time. There's something very urgent. We probably will jump in that triage sense of trying to escalate the priority of that. But as a baseline, no, if somebody meets the criteria and the referral is accepted, and I'm not sure I said this, but the criteria is just drug and alcohol use and mental health experiences, both of which can just be self-identified. So we don't require a clinical diagnosis for mental health. If somebody comes in and says, I feel X, I feel Y, that's sufficient for us, particularly to start the work. So within that criteria, within those parameters, no is the easiest answer. And then like, yes, maybe is the other part of the answer, but typically no, yeah. We know that everybody that comes for support needs support, so try to do it in the order that it comes, I guess. Good question though.